Hello, everybody. My name is Venerable Wade Buripanyo, and I'm joined this evening for Monk Chat with Bhante Jayasaro and Bhante Jagaro. It's Friday night, Empty Cloud Monastery, the regular Monk Chat, and we don't have a topic for a live stream of this sort on Friday nights. We just we take questions from people typing in remotely or from the yogis who are here in the monastery. Why don't we start by doing Namo Tassa as traditional? Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. We have a number of people joining us remotely. We have Kumu, Maria Van Dyke.
There's actually more people up there.
Okay.
So if you go over here and then kind of scroll up this way, you can see that.
Okay, thank you. Rick Thorne, Joseph Hammond, Wasabi Chan, Karen B., Kobe Davis, whom we know from his stay here at the monastery recently, was returned home, now joining remotely. Upasika Metika, Manal Vyas Mehta, and many other people, it looks like. So let's see. I'm going to take a look and see if there are any questions online. Oh, we have a congratulatory message also from Joseph Hammond. Congratulations to Venerable Wada. May he live long and flourish in the Dhamma. This is a reference to Ethan ordained as a novice monk last Sunday. It was a big occasion here at the monastery, a double ordination. We had novice Metiko also ordained as a bhikkhu. So it was quite a wonderful occasion. Many lay people came to the monastery as well to participate and to watch. It was a really wonderful time. So congratulations to both of them. All right. I'd like to ask if any of the yogis here in the room have any questions for the group. Oh boy.
I had a question.
Okay.
One day, I was reading this book, this words, and I ran across the word bodhisattva, and I forgot what it meant.
What word, sir?
Bodhisattva.
Bodhisattva.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, and that's the the bodhisattva is the Pali version of the term bodhisattva.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Traditionally, it's typically rendered into English. It's been understood as an enlightenment being. That's usually how it's translated. And someone who's made a determination to try to attain Samma Sambuddha, like our historic Gautama Buddha. So to postpone attaining enlightenment until fulfilling the requirements of developing parami to attain Samma Sambuddha, like the Gautama Buddha. And so right now we have a bodhisattva in the two-seated heaven, according to tradition, the Maitreya bodhisattva, for example, who is expected to be the next Samma Sambuddha. We see this in the suttas, I believe, actually, there's a reference to this, with the Gautama Buddha telling us about this. I read in the introduction to the Digha Nikaya, Maurice Walsh wrote that there's a theory that the actual meaning should be being intent on enlightenment. That there's a new understanding of the transliteration from the Sanskrit into Pali. So that's the basic meaning. Oh, Teddy's here as well. Does that answer your question?
Partially. So another question I have was, so does that mean like people who aspire to be enlightened are bodhisattvas also, or is that different?
Oh, well, usually it's understood in the Pali tradition to be someone who wants to be a Samma Sambuddha, meaning someone like the Gautama Buddha who attained a full self-enlightenment on their own. Okay, right. And someone who is aspiring to attain enlightenment might be an arhat, aspiring to attain arhatship, for example. So, That's right. In Thailand, it's interestingly, it's used in a more general sense to mean anyone who's made a determination to attain something specific, aside from attaining arhanships. So, for example, someone who's intent upon being a chief disciple of a Sama Sambuddha, for example, might be called a bodhisattva. This was a much more broader term in Thai Buddhism, but it's particular to them. Yeah. Very much, it's particular to them. Sure.
Looks like we have quite a few questions, so let's see. Let's go back up. First,
I think maybe that's the first question.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. A question from Manal. Dear Venerables, I listened to Bhante J's Dhamma discussion on Bhava Tanha this week. On the topic of extinguishing craving in one's lifetime, it's become apparent in my practice that certain fetters... see, and then it cuts off. Here is the second half of the question. Could be dealt with easier, while other fetters will need much more application of Dhamma in order to dissolve. In terms of extinguishing the really stuck-on cravings, such as kamaraga, I have concern. Okay, there's such a longer runway needed for progress. This and other latent cravings, and I may not have enough time in this lifetime to completely develop the practice or wisdom. Should I hold on to this ever-present concern as a motivator in my practice, or is this wrong view? What you would say, Bhante Jaya.
So this is one of those interesting things, right? You say here, you're not sure, you may not have enough time in this lifetime to completely develop. None of us might. We all might die tomorrow. Who knows? So really the focus should be on the Noble Eightfold Path. Just practice the Noble Eightfold Path in its entirety, and eventually you'll get there. Right? Don't worry about, how much time you have or things that defilements or really strong underlying habits and tendencies that you have. It might need the whole life to actually to overcome those. You might need a couple lives to overcome those, and that's okay. Just keep practicing. Don't worry about too much about the specifics in this regard. And if you recognize something as something that you need, as a defilement, as something that you're trying to lessen, as something that you're trying to abandon, then if you can observe yourself abandoning it over time, if slowly, then you're progressing. You're on the right path. So just keep going.
Sadhu. All right.
There's maybe another question up here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sure. All right. So that was Manal's.
TJ. Yeah.
Okay. We have a question from TJ. What's on your mind about Paticca based on Buddhadasa's model, meaning observable moments in one life, and Buddhaghosa's model, meaning multiple lives? Let's see. Would you like to take this one?
Yeah, so one way of considering this, so just for those that don't know, Paticca is the often called the Buddhist teachings on dependent origination, and so it's basically the kind of the causal conditional sequence that connects avijja, ignorance, all the way to birth and death. And so the problem of death was something that the Buddha, when he was actually still a bodhisattva, was contemplating. And of course, one of the sort of teachings of the Buddha was this kind of conditional sequence. And so the Buddhaghosa's model is basically referring to using this model as a way of understanding a moment by moment experience. That's Buddhadasa's model. I'm going off, by the way, I actually don't know their reference. I'm just going off of the terminology laid here. And then the terminology, like here, the Buddhist model is the multiple lives model, which is referring to this present life and a future life, and the past life. So I think one way of looking at this that I found helpful was not trying to say it's either or. In other words, it's like a binary exclusion. It can only be this or that way, because clearly, there is benefit to looking at this in a moment by moment sense, and clearly it also seems that the Buddha didn't just mean this to be in a moment by moment sense, because the teachings on karma and the teachings of the Buddha seem quite connected with our kind of this kind of continuous birthing process. We keep getting born in one place to another, and so it's trying to solve this problem of birth and death. And so maybe that's one way you can look at that, is not trying to look at it as it's either this or it's that, but actually as a teach that actually has enough depth that it could be both. So that's one way of looking at it.
All right. And we have a question specifically for you, Venerable Jagaro, about would you tell us about your planned Tudong?
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'll find out what it is. I guess the people want to know a little more about it that don't know. So I'm planning to do a Tudong next month, sometime in April, starting sometime in April. I'm estimating sometime mid-April. I'll be doing it in California, starting northwest of Los Angeles, probably west of Thousand Oaks. And I'll be making my way up the coastal cities, and hopefully making my way up to Santa Cruz, which is kind of the next major city south of San Francisco. So it's a pretty long trek, and I'm not sure if there's anything more. Maybe I could, for those that don't know what Tudong means, my understanding, it's a Thai-derived word from the Pali Dhutanga, and Dhutanga basically refers to an ascetic practice. So quite often monks will go out, including Thailand and other countries, and they go wandering. In fact, this is actually what the kind of traditional way that monks practiced at the time of the Buddha and since then. And so basically trying to carry on this tradition in modern United States. And I'll basically be going with a pack. And I'll be going on Pindabat every morning, most of the time with places where nobody has no idea I'll be there or without any expectation. And then I'll be traveling from time to time, moving my way up to the next city. So it's a way of practicing diligence and patience with whatever it comes to be, because there's so many things you can't have absolutely no control over, and also getting a chance to meet people and getting a chance to let them know that there's a Buddhist monk in the world. So this is not a Buddhist country. Quite often when we go out, people don't exactly know who we are. Often they recognize us as religious. Sometimes they recognize us as Buddhist monks, but usually they're recognized religious. Often we get called Hare Krishnas. So we're not Hare Krishnas. It's different thing. It's I don't know. I think hopefully it's a good
answer.
answer.
Yeah, okay, I wonder if I could ask some questions. You mentioned you'll be going out on Pindapata, and I wonder if you could explain that the term in English would be alms round, I think. Is that right?
Sure. So the traditional way that Buddhist monastics would go out and collect food in the morning, since the time of the Buddha, and this was, from my understanding, something that the Buddha adopted from the existing samana culture that existed in India at the time, where basically religious seekers would go out and collect food, anything from people. They'd often go from to a village, from house to house. They'd stand outside a house, and then if there were no alms given, they go to another house and then wait, and then just kind of go to another house. I'll be doing something similar, but I usually won't be standing outside houses because most people are at work, in the mornings and things like that. And they wouldn't be expecting a Buddhist monk to be standing outside their house. So usually what we do is we go outside places where people might be coming and going, like a supermarket or maybe a coffee shop or something like that, because that's usually people are coming and going in the morning. And I'll stand outside with my alms bowl, and just wait and see if anybody approaches. Sometimes people will see you and they will say hello, and you say hello, and they go, oh, what are you doing? And you explain, oh, I'm a Buddhist monk, and they might be curious about that. So, what does that mean? I've never seen a Buddhist monk before. I've seen a Buddhist monk on TV, or you associate with the Dalai Lama and things like that. So you just go from there. And then so Pindabat, sometimes, so in the context of Pindabat, of course, we have to find a way of surviving. This is with food, and so sometimes people recognize that you have this kind of orange crocheted round object in front. They go, "What's that?" Oh, it's my alms bowl. And so I'm here collecting alms. Alms, what's that? So Buddhist monks, we go out and collect food in the morning, and they go, oh. And so sometimes people go, oh, can I help you with something? And then you go from there. Yeah.
If there are any merit seekers out there who want to find you on your Tudong Bhante Jagaro, is there some way they'd be able to do that? They want to put food in a monk's bowl.
Yes. Probably the simplest way of doing so. I don't have a specific start date yet. It's basically because it's going to be quite dependent on the weather. In California, it's actually this week. I saw the forecast. It's at least in the Southern California, it's fairly clear, but they've been having huge amounts of rain. So I'm going to, wait till it actually looks like we're getting to the kind of springtime season. The winter has subsided. So, but most likely I'll be starting the midweek of April. And if you're interested, and I'll actually be keeping a microblog, kind of like a posting or something once a day. And if you're interested in that, maybe what we can do is, I don't know if the Empty Cloud has some sort of like email list, or what do you even do for like sending things out? Anyways, like Instagram or?
There's a mailing list. There is a mailing list.
Uh-huh.
There's an Instagram account as well.
I
think they have a Facebook account. I never.
Okay. Well, maybe
Facebook, Instagram.
there's things like that. Okay. Maybe I'll post my website address on there. If you think that'd be okay, I have no idea.
We'll have to stay in touch and see what we can
Yeah,
do.
yeah. That's probably the simplest thing to do.
A lot of people would be interested.
Yeah. So yeah. Again, I'll be starting sometime next month.
I have a question I have another question for you about your Tudong. It's a quite interesting subject. And also like to ask Bhante Jasaro afterward about his experiences on Bindabat recently with you. I wonder if you could tell us what would be a kind of a philosophical reason, a religious reason or something like this, for spiritual reason for going out on Tudong, or perhaps for you in this particular instance or in general.
Sure. So I think I was kind of touching on this before, when it's there's it's often quite unpredictable, and so we're exercising a lot of spiritual paramis and developing spiritual paramis, because it's a lot of work. We're dependent on the offerings of others, so it can be food can be a little, it could be a lot, it could be nothing, it could be a bag of apples, it could be a sandwich. You have no idea what it's going to be. The weather can be all sorts of things. Again, I'm trying to time this so that I'm avoiding the heavy rains, but you look at the forecast, it could be sunny, and you start the walk, and all of a sudden you get rain, a week later. So you have a particular path, laid out, and all of a sudden you see there's road closures, or they don't want you to go this way anymore, and you have to totally make another detour. And so you have to be willing to be with all these sort of unknowns and make adjustments and adaptations.
One key point maybe we'll make really quickly is that that behind this practice of alms round, of Pindapata, is that the Buddhist monks are not allowed to store food and eat stored up food, and Buddhist monks only eat food that is offered to them on that same morning. Can only receive it and eat it between dawn and midday. And so Venerable Jagara will be going out practicing the recollection that we're supposed to reflect on frequently as Buddhist monks, that our very lives are dependent on the gifts of others. So, sadhu, Venerable Jagara.
Right.
I wanted to ask Bhante Jayasaro, who had a chance to go on alms round with you in this area a couple of times recently, if you had any thoughts or reflections on doing so.
So yeah, other than what Tan Jagara has said, this is, I made the comment today. I've actually been on Pindapat 4 times now with Tan in 2 different monasteries, and both times you meet people and you kind of grow the awareness of the monastery in the area. It's like, oh, there's a monastery around here, and so I'm really keen on the aspect of giving the image of a monastic to the community, right? Mm-hmm. Most people are not going to know what a monastic is. They've never seen one, and all of a sudden there's this weird bald dude or a bunch of weird bald people walking down the streets. Who are they? So we had it was funny. We had while we were standing in front of a place today, we had a woman drive by and take a picture, and she kind of held up traffic a little bit, but she took the picture. And then we had one of the Thai supporters, the local Thai supporters, stopped and was giving us some alms. And there's a police car right there. And I saw the police car go, but then it stopped, and then it started backing up. And I'm like, uh-oh, what's going on? And the officer comes, takes his phone out, and he took pictures of us. Right? And so that's like, that's a wonderful way of kind of raising awareness in the culture of, that there are Buddhist monastics in the culture, and there's Buddhism in the culture and things like that. So it's a really good practice in that way as well. It's good for you, and it's good for, other people who, and again, maybe, a person takes a picture, maybe in this lifetime, they never see a Buddhist monk, or maybe they never go to a monastery, but there's a seed in there. Maybe that grows in the next life. Who knows? Right. So it's a good thing.
Sadhu. Okay, we'll move on. See what other questions we have here. We have a question from Sud S. Dear Venerables, it is enforced somewhat in my community to employ services to keep pests away. I have no intention of harming pests, but I have to employ lawn care services. Am I breaking the first precept? Okay. This is, it's quite a kind of a common problem for people to run into, and I wonder, Bhante Jaya, how you would advise this kind of situation. It's enforced somewhat in my community to employ services to keep pests away. And so I have no intention of harming pests, but I have to employ lawn care services. Am I breaking the first precept?
If you're employing somebody to mow your lawn, no, I would not say that's breaking the first precept. I think this kind of comes into what we would call the difference between Buddhism and Jainism, right? The idea for you to hire somebody to mow your lawn is to have a clean lawn, is to have, because that's part of the community here. This is when Bhante and Aya first moved in here, they had no experience of living in suburbia. So Aya's like, I want the lawn to grow really tall for the nature. And the neighbors are like, hello? What about? Right? So no, this is the way things are, for health of pets, for all kinds of reasons why people would want, the lawn to be down. And I don't see that would be breaking the first precept, right? The reason being is this. Your intention is to have the lawn mowed. Beings will most likely be killed while you're mowing the lawn. Beings will most likely be killed while you're walking on the lawn, right? We're Buddhists, we're not Jains. So the difference here is this. If you're walking down the street and you step on ants, to Buddhism, if you didn't intentionally choose to step on the ant to kill them, then there's no karma of killing, you're not breaking a precept. For a Jain, it's different, because no matter what no matter what your intention is, you step on that ant, you have bad karma, right? So thankfully, we don't have to, we as Buddhists worry about intention, right? This is very important. I remember at we had this, really nice guy, really super vegan dude, came to Bhavana, and he lasted about a month for a variety of different reasons. But one of those things where most at Bhavana Society, where I'm from, the forest monastery, most of the place is heated by wood. And we have this big wood burner where you put huge logs of wood to heat the meditation hall and things like that. That's how people, when they come for a retreat, they stay warm in the winter. Right? And he wouldn't help me put wood in the fire because there might be bugs in there. And I said, well, thanks for nothing. But you're kind of more of a Jain than a Buddhist, but it's okay. It's whatever. Like I said, he lasted a month. He did. There was too much, for him to live in a place with him trying to follow the rules that he was following. But so this is a very important thing. And so, yeah, when I would throw in a piece of wood, if I saw that there was I would look. Do I see a bug? No, I don't see a bug. And I throw it in. And if there was a bug that came out of the wood while it was in, maybe I would try to save it. But it wasn't my intention to kill those bugs. My intention is to heat everybody by putting wood in the wood burner, right? So I would not say that you are breaking the first precept by having your lawn mowed. I would say it gets much closer to the first precept if you start having to hire like exterminators to come in to take out rats or to take out mice. That's getting much closer to the first precept, right? Because the only reason you hire an exterminator is to exterminate, is to kill. So that becomes a little bit more shady there. But for mowing the lawn, no, I would not say.
All right. A question here from Joseph Hammond. Bhante, I'm interested in hearing thoughts on mudras in the Theravada school. Is it allowable? I just learned the mudra for offering flowers. You can't see, but I'm offering you all flowers mentally and little bouquets, little emoticon bouquets. I guess you'd say. So that's right. I wonder if either of you could answer a question about mudras in the Theravada school. I don't know if I don't really have
any experience in mudras.
Not me neither.
Okay, so
Does anybody here at the monastery have any experience with mudras?
I know that different mudras have some of them have different meanings, like the earth touching posture and things like that. But other than that, I don't really know. And I do know that in the Theravada tradition, there are meanings to it, but I don't know the meanings
right. Well, there's something right. So I wouldn't know about mudras for offering flowers. There's you mentioned one just now. This is great. The earth touching, where the Buddha asked, where the Bodhisattva, really still the Bodhisattva asked the earth goddess to bear witness that he had fulfilled his dana parami. There's the one that's quite commonly seen with him holding his hands. I'm sure I won't get it quite right, but the Buddha images with his hands up like this, showing he's teaching the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths with their 3 rounds and 12 permutations. I guess from the Dhammacakka Sutta. There's the one like this where he has 2 hands up. The Buddha images with 2 hands up, and it means that he's telling the 2 sides, the 2 quarreling sides who are about to engage in a battle over water rights, that they should stop. And yes, so it's been explained to me anyway. And that and he tells them, he tells the two sects, the 2 sides rather, that blood is thicker than water, because actually they were related through the Sakyan clan, if I recall correctly. Blood is thicker than water. He puts up the 2 hands to stop them. Ajahn Chah had a different interpretation. The Buddha image with the 2 hands is in the Uposita hall at Wat Nong Papong, and reportedly a layman asked him, why is it that the Buddha has 2 hands up? And because there's another mudra where he only has 1 hand up. And a lay supporter asked him, why is it that the Buddha image here has 2 hands up? And Ajahn Chah says, because these days people are twice as stubborn as they used to be. So you have to be especially emphatic. And so, I don't know. I wonder if either of you might know, what does the 1 hand up signify?
No idea.
Okay. Are there any other mudras I may have missed? I could think of. Okay. I've seen Buddha images in Thailand that are quite common with the 2 hands crossed like this. I just suddenly remembered, but I don't know what this means. And I have to admit, I don't know what it means. The standing Buddha like this. A very, very common one, of course, is the I want to display this mudra. Maybe I'll hold it up like this. Okay, here we go. With the hands in the lap like this, and of course the samadhi mudra. The Buddha's in concentration, practicing meditations. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful. Limited knowledge of mudras. We have another question here from Mark. A client recently shared with me that they were filled with disgust about everything in their life. What counsel would you give a layperson who has little interest in Buddhism? Okay. Well, I think one thing that's very fortunate these days is that there's quite a bit of scientific research into meditation. Secular research, and so meditation is taken up by people who aren't interested in Buddhism, for example, or interested in religion in general at all. So there are scientific studies into breath meditation, saying that if you practice breath meditation, you'll feel calmer, and you're also, in fact, actually, you'll grow more intelligent. Actually. Then breath meditation also, that this will help with managing emotions, and also that if we practice loving kindness meditation, we will grow in emotional intelligence. So perhaps discussing these kinds of practices might be helpful in the context of scientific research. I wonder if either of the venerables have additional advice.
I guess I have a question. Maybe Mark, if you'd be willing to follow up with a question, because you said client, and I'm not sure what the context is. And then when you said they're filled with disgust with everything, I mean, that's a pretty. I wasn't sure if that's referring to their, their just life in general, or something about Buddhist practice, or so. Those are the questions. So.
This seems like this is a person who has little interest in Buddhism,
Right.
so this wouldn't be a practitioner.
Right. A client recently shared with me that they were filled with disgust about everything in their life. What counsel would you give a layperson who has little interest in Buddhism?
I would say that they should start looking, trying to find things that are beautiful. Right now, again, this is not a Buddhist person, and if this is a Buddhist practitioner, I would probably not be saying this. But, this is kind of, what this brings up in me is when we practice the Asubha practice, right? And we're trying to have a balance, right? Between, total intoxication with the body and total hatred of the body, right? If either way is too far, right? So if this person is just seeing disgust, well, maybe maybe their life is pretty rough. Maybe there is nothing beautiful or good or kind in their life. Well, maybe they have to look outside their life. Maybe they have to kind of, just look around, maybe a sunrise and, just various things like that. There are things that can help this person not be just totally full of disgust. And so, looking for something to balance that out, I think might be a good thing.
Excellent. I think one thing that can be helpful is looking at, how does it feel to have these kinds of emotions? The emotion of disgust, for example. Oftentimes, the heart doesn't actually really realize one of the basic one of the basic faults of perception is seeing that which is unpleasant as being pleasant. And so one of the reasons the heart will generate an emotion like disgust, for example, is simply not realizing how it really feels. And if the client can develop some mindfulness around this, or some introspection, and notice, well, how does it feel to be in this kind of a mental state? This can help the heart to let go of it, or to reduce generating it. If we can look at, how does it feel if we, for example, look at what's actually good in that which disgusts us? Is there some silver lining to the cloud, for example? Does that feel better? Or perhaps meditation practices, for example. So, okay. It's a question from TJ, I think. Is it recalling? Oh, right. Okay. Oh, actually, there are quite a few questions here. Okay, sorry. Well, I mentioned TJ, so let me get to that one, and then we'll come back. So maybe relatively quick. TJ asks, "What is your first book on Buddhism?" Just gonna double jog girl, if you remember. Bhante Jayasara, if you remember. the first book on Buddhism.
Maybe Bhante just so you can go first because I still have to figure out what.
So I guess my very, very first meditation book was actually by a Tibetan Buddhist. I bought it at Barnes and Noble, like almost 20 years ago. My very first Buddhist book was actually because when I was exploring Buddhism, I explored Mahayana and Tibetan first. So it was some really esoteric Tibetan or Vajrayana book that I read a little bit and I never read again. But my very first Theravada book was Bhikkhu Bodhi's, the little booklet on the Eight Noble Truths that I got at the Bodhi Monastery. So that's probably my very first Theravada book. My very first sutta book was Sutta Nipata, which I got on Amazon.
Yes. Do you know the name of the book by Bhikkhu Bodhi?
I think it's just like, it's something Noble Eightfold Path.
It's
Noble
like-
Eightfold Path.
Yeah.
It's very kind of a, it's quite a common one, very beneficial to many people.
You know, this is a good question. When I was starting to think about it, I was like, I can't remember the first book because when I started, reading about Buddhism, it was done all online. So I had the, access to the World Wide Web back then, and so when I started practicing meditation and Buddhism, that's where I looked. And so I want to say it was probably years before I even got a book on Buddhism. But I had probably read, many things, including many parts of the suttas, even way before then. So, and I'd say, what was the first thing you read on the internet about Buddhism? And boy, I want to say probably I can't say it's the first one, probably the site that had the most impact was Access to Insight.
It's insight,
Yeah,
sure.
so that was, of course, this was 15, 20 years ago. So,
Classic, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that you and I both kind of have that share. Like we don't, how many times somebody asks, have you read this book, Bhante? Have you read that book? And I'm like, no. Because most people do kind of end up coming to it with reading a lot of books. But, yeah.
See, I still remember the first substantial thing I read about Buddhism. It was a commentary to the Heart Sutra written by a Tibetan monk, Geshe Rabten. And it opened with, his commentary opened with, all beings are seeking pleasure and trying to avoid pain. And it really struck me. We were reading this as part of a philosophy class, and there's so many complicated arguments in the philosophy class. And I said, well, actually, this is really refreshing. He's saying something that really seems very true right up front. And then later on the line that still really struck me. All conditioned phenomena are devoid of inherent existence. From a line that I remember down to today. This was when I was in college, 25, almost 30 years ago. So, the name of the book was Echoes of Voidness, and it was a commentary to the Heart Sutra. All right, let's see here. Backtracking a little bit. Looks like maybe we have a question from a yogi here. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah,
Sure.
thank you. Can I just a quick follow up to this one? So it looks like you have explored Buddhism before devoting to this particular tradition. So I'm curious, what made you choose this particular tradition?
Bhante?
So I have this weird tendency to always try to find the oldest and closest to the beginning. Even I grew up Catholic, but like I was obsessed with like the Desert Fathers and like the early church and things like that. So when I, got into Buddhism, that was kind of like my search. And I remember reading, like a little blurb on maybe even like Wikipedia or one of these kind of websites, and it was like Theravada Buddhism is the oldest and most orthodox. And I'm like, oh, I think this is for me. So it was like a gradual like moving towards what I consider. And now, I mean, truth be told, I don't even really consider myself Theravadan, although for all intents and purposes, I am. I mean, I'm a Theravada monk. I'm not good. But there's so much of Theravada that I don't really follow per se either, because I follow the suttas. You know, I'm very, you know, but there's a lot more than just the suttas in the Theravada tradition. So I've just always tried to find like what's the closest, what's the earliest, you know, because I kind of feel like the closest to whoever started the thing is most likely going to be the most accurate to what they actually said. So that's kind of my inclination, my tendency that kind of led me through all the traditions. And I also I didn't leave the Catholic faith like militant or hating it per se, but there was things that I saw in the other traditions that hit me too close to like a lot of the other religions. And then I, later on I saw that was also in Theravada too. So, so it's like, because I went through this kind of militant Theravada phase where it's like Theravada is the best, the rest are horrible.
Right.
But yeah, and I moved on from that many years ago.
For you, Bhante Jagaro, did you come initially into Theravadan Buddhism, or were you investigating other?
I mean, I was first exposed to this through doing a Esenguenka course. For those that don't know, he started an organization that teaches meditation. They explicitly say we're not Buddhists, but I mean, it's pretty Buddhist. Maybe stripped down a lot, but so I could tell, okay, this is Buddhist, even though he doesn't call it Buddhist. And I started doing that for that style of meditation for quite a while. And then, of course, I got interested in reading the suttas and other teachings from that, mostly suttas from the Theravada Pali Canon. So I have looked at some other traditions and teachers of other traditions, but I think similar to Bhante J, whatever's simple, whatever's old, that seems to resonate with me a lot. I never got too much into like pageantry or like lots of things. It confuses me, and maybe my mind isn't. I get kind of like, what are they trying to say when they do a lot of rituals and things like that? It's just sort of like, look, I'm suffering. I need to give me some help here. That's more where I was coming from, or like, So that's, I think, part of the reason why I was attracted to reading the Pali Canon, because the Buddha was, much of the Pali Canon, the Buddha is just very, very, very direct, and in a very consistent message that you start to see when you start to read a lot of it, and also it actually just started to really impress me. Not that I'm much of a religious. I wasn't a religious person before, and so I didn't read too many religious texts before that. But there's something very impressive about you can tell this was a very wise and intelligent person, whoever came up with this. This wasn't just like, I remember reading Dianetics, this L. Ron Hubbard when I was a kid. I seen in the bookstore, because you see these commercials. What is this? And I remember reading it, and I'm like, I can tell this. I mean, it's like when people. I don't know what the right words are. I don't want to be too disparaging, but you're gonna get a bunch of Scientologists coming after me. Yeah, I know. But yeah, you start to read things from people, and it's not very impressive. It doesn't really land. But there's something that was quite impressive reading the Buddha's teachings. So.
Okay, I followed a similar trajectory to the Bhante Jayasara, that I started reading more and more about Buddhism after my initial contact with it, and I found it quite confusing. There's so much different information, and so I'd read that the Pali Canon was the oldest extant record of the Buddhist teachings. I said, well, that's what I want to study then. So that's what got me into Theravada, and I also appreciated the form, the monastic form, with an emphasis on the Vinaya. It's the code of conduct, basically, for the monks. That's another reason I've kind of stayed in Theravada since then. But I've since grown quite a lot of faith in some elements of Buddhism that would be considered Mahayana. For example, I have a great deal of faith in several of the bodhisattvas that usually you wouldn't see associated with Theravada Buddhism. So yeah, life can be complicated, but very rich also. We have another question from Yogi. Okay, Henry.
Yeah, I have a question. So I noticed that throughout my day-to-day practice, that when I like speak or behave, I tend to have I sometimes will notice that this way of like self, or like, oh, this is how I am, or like how I used to be, kind of will come up from time to time. So I wanted to ask, what are some mindful tips to help identify, remind myself that this is not me, not I, and that the things that I am identifying as me are actually useless, and because of it's due to lack of wisdom.
Huh.
Yeah, and I'm noticing this is also a part of like, I guess, like being using, like when I used to use social media, like there's different things that can be like emphasized that, oh, like this is me, or like now, like the past couple of years I've on this social media thing called TikTok. There's like this trend that goes on where it's like, oh, like should I be that, follow me on being that girl, like literally they'll say that in quotes, and that girl will mean like this aesthetic kind of young woman, goes to the gym early in the morning and like meditates or something for like 20 minutes, then this self-journaling, and then prepares himself with like whether it's college work or starting their career, and then like a self-care routine afterwards, and really like spending time. Like there's like a legit like schedule that like that will be that is exposed on this media, but it's like very like it can be very toxic because they only always express the good parts, and yeah, so I noticed that like will come up in my mind sometimes. So I'm trying to detox and like remove.
Oh, okay. So it's like maybe you're talking about a couple of different things. If we talk about the first one about how do we notice the not self aspect of our experience when we start identifying with things and thinking this is me, or this is the way I used to be, or this is, well, I think especially for you as a yogi, you've been here in the monastery for a while now, and you have an excellent opportunity to practice meditation. I think that rather than thinking about it, because it seems like you have a very good intellectual understanding of it, that you want to try to experience the situation as it really is. See, so if you can develop your mindfulness and notice, what is it that you're identifying with? What is it really like? See that it's inconstant. It's something that's changing. Then the not self nature kind of follows on this. Or you could be watching, for example, that sense of self arising and changing and passing away. Do you follow what I mean? Is you already have a good intellectual understanding of what's going on. But the key to letting go is to actually experience it as it really is. So if you can practice for that, you have a lot of quiet time here as well. And so you can when you have an opportunity, you can practice the formal meditation and really keep developing your mindfulness that way. So that when you see these kinds of thoughts arising in your daily activities, or when you go online, for example, practice being aware of it as it really is. So the heart sees the inconstancy of that which you're identifying with, or sees the inconstancy of this kind of sense. So then the heart will know that it can let go of this, or that there isn't any reason really to be identifying with it, or to be claiming it as you or yours. Okay. Does that sound like it addresses the first aspect of your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I think I guess I have to remind myself and like just be more mindful of like seeing of when this happened
Sadhu. The second half is about detoxing. I'll ask one of the other venerable. Detoxing from the negative content you're seeing online.
yeah.
Okay.
And also I guess like maybe some like behavioral patterns that that I would I guess like I was used to like as a before like practicing meditation like this will come up like with like friends that I used to be around, or like they noticed that like I'll kind of rub off like their behavior, but like in this practice it's not very like useless. Like, do you understand?
Either of the venerables have something to add?
Could you you saying when you're with friends, you said something is useless, but I didn't quite follow what.
So like basically like sometimes like my behavioral patterns of like of like how I was like with my friends with like my old friends will come up from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
But like it's like now when I'm practicing more, I'm seeing that it's like like it's useless. Like it's related to like me, like mine, or like this is how I am. So that's why like so I'm basically asking like how I can like what are some other tips that I can like remove that.
Well, I mean, if it's arising and you don't act on it, you're doing the work. So it sounds like there's you're seeing like certain tendencies of the mind come up, and it might be just the fact that these things you're like, wow, this is very unpleasant, or I don't want to act on it, but it keeps coming up. Is that what's kind of happening? Like these yeah. So it's one of the things that I really appreciate. If you could say, like, what was like, if I think about my preceptor, Ajahn Pasano, and I kind of think about his teachings over the years when I was living in Abhayagiri, and what was he trying to encourage? Like, what were his general teachings, right? And you can basically I could kind of summarize it as in two words, and one was diligence and the other one was patience. And the diligence is the repeated application of the teachings, just like what Venerable was saying, just practicing sati, mindful, some practice of mindfulness, and keep returning to it. And the other one is this quality of patience. I mean, you are recognizing that, yeah, this is unpleasant, this is dukkha, get me out of here. But that quality of patience is that willingness to be with that incredibly intense, uncomfortable, get me out of here experience, and that willingness to be with that over and over and over. Yeah.
Yes, I wonder if I may follow up really quick. There's when we have these different kinds of experiences, we anytime we're interacting with other people or going online and or whatever kind, even if we're just sitting still, all different kinds of things can arise in our minds. And this is what you brought up as just one kind of thing, the self-identification, for example. It reminded me of thinking about it in a different way. It reminded me of something Ajahn Chah once said. He said he said when we're dealing with our sense experience, it's like we're walking up to a house. And on the front of the house, there's 6 windows. And first we see someone in the window over there, and then we see someone in the window over there, and we see someone in the window over there, in the third window. We think that each one of these is a different person. He says, but then if we get closer, as we come closer, we see actually it's the same person. It's the same person just moving from window to window. And he says, and you know what person that is? He says, the person is named Anicca Dukkha Anatta. That is impermanent, unpleasant, or not satisfactory, you might say, and not self. And so if we take that kind of stance towards all the experience we have, as we're practicing, you have an excellent opportunity here in the monastery practicing meditation to not get caught up too much in the particulars of what it is that's happening, but to be mindful and experience it in accordance with those three characteristics, the anicca, dukkha, anatta. There you go.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Yes.
As kind of an extension of the question, I think that at any age, we're affected by this pressure to inhabit a persona. And I think it's intensified for a certain generation because of social media. It's your avatar, like online. Like, it's so important to have this concrete persona that's represented by likes and dislikes, or that girl. That was kind of a neat reference.
Yeah.
I don't know it, but I kind of get it, I think.
Uh-huh.
And I think that can affect people of any age. And, as we go through this practice and we're trying to recognize anicca, dukkha, anatta, like we're really trying to shed self. How do you continue to be in the world if you're not a monastic and you're a householder and you're trying to achieve that? You're nobody.
Being nobody, going nowhere. Isn't that an Ajahn Chah and Ajahn Brahm thing?
I came book.
Oh, okay.
I was just
Yeah,
reading
that's
in
right.
that book right when you said
I
it.
came. That's
Sure.
right. Yeah.
What do you do if there are a lot of social pressures to be somebody, of one sort or another, and how do you resist that? How do you make your way through daily life out in the world without caving into the pressures to try and be somebody and identify with a lot of things and so on like that? So, yeah. Any insights? Any ideas?
Well, the thing that comes to mind is, there's some practical things, and I think the practical things as a lay person is, and I think this is just generally true regardless of the lay person, but it's actually being willing to be recognize the dukkha of the situation. And so what I mean by that is, this is hard. This is hard for everybody in this situation. It's not pleasant. It's a lot of pressure. We're social. Most people are social beings. I remember being quite kind of envious of people that, like don't care and just, kind of. But I realize they're just really irritating. People. There's a reason why people don't like them is because they're quite insensitive. But it's like, wow, it would be great. I don't care. But most of us we're sort of designed to be quite sensitive to the likes and dislikes of others, right? And we're also culturally conditioned on top of that to be quite extra sensitive to the likes and dislikes of others, and we have to fit in this mold or that mold. So it's a willingness to, oh wow, this is difficult, this is hard, this is painful. And so when you come from that point, you're not expecting kind of, one of the things that I think happens, you start to soften, the mind can soften and not expect like immediate change. That kind of harshness of like, you should be this, that part starts to take a little bit of back seat if we can actually recognize the dukkha and the difficulty of the situation we're in. So I think that's important. The second one is some of the, I think, I don't want to say advantages, but things you can do as a layperson is that, well, okay, you start to think very practically, what can I do to change the circumstances, right? It may not be something immediate, right? So you can start to think, okay, well, there's something in my family situation that's affected. There's something to do with my work situation. Is there something to do with the various, with social media? The various electronic stuff we have. I was just speaking with somebody today about, they were talking about how they felt because of the the nature of the work that they do, they have to be using, Facebook and all these other big companies. And well, I mean, actually, there are people that don't use these things, right? But there's certain consequences as a result of that, but they make choices, right? They make choices and they say, okay, this is not worth it. And they make a different choice, right? It's actually possible to, even though maybe everybody uses this thing, you can make a conscious choice not to. And maybe that's not something you do immediately, right? But you make a plan for that. This is something that's really important to me. I'm finding this social media stuff to be so, problematic to me. I'm going to find a way of either limiting it or not using it, right? Or using something else. Even though all my friends and family are using it, right? Or you have to start making some choices, and this is possible to do. I think that's one of the things I find tragic or sad when people say I can't do that. It's like, well, what do you mean you can't do that? Of course you can. Okay, it may not be pleasant. It may not mean that there's doesn't mean there isn't effects to it. But it maybe not something you do immediately. Like you can't necessarily change your job immediately, right? You can't necessarily change your family life experience, but you can start making some choices to start making some steps that will bear its fruit, next month, several months down the line, or years down the line. So those are the two things I would put out there.
Excellent. Yeah. I have a thought on this from a different point of view, a little bit different point of view. And I want to ask Bhante Jaya if he has anything as well. It's I want to give the yogis who are here. It's 8:30 now, and so we're coming. But I think I'm ready to go ahead and continue, and everyone's welcome to stay. But if anyone wants to go continue their individual practice or whatever you feel, I wanted to mention it for any of the yogis here. Please feel welcome to go ahead and do that if you'd like to go back to your individual practice at this point. But okay. So Bhante Jaya, I wonder if you have any ideas on this, the being nobody going nowhere. How do you not cave into the pressures to get caught up in self out in the world?
I don't really have anything else to add. I do think that we have 40 people online asking questions from all over the world, so we should probably get back to their questions. I think the two of you covered the question very well.
Okay. Wanted to add to it this is from a slightly different point of view. If you can't go into the monastery like we have and stay in the monastery all the time and practice meditation, perhaps another thing to do is to start practicing the Uposita day. It's something that's recommended in the suttas as being integral to the lay path. And I did this for many years in lay life and found it extremely helpful. It was kind of what in modern parlance we call it like a one-day retreat sort of thing. Keeping precepts and practicing meditation, turning off the phone and not getting involved in any kind of entertainment. And I found it really helpful for kind of decompressing and reevaluating my priorities, saying if I drifted away from my priorities and getting back on track. And it felt so good to practice being calm. And so I like to recommend that for anyone who feels inclined to do so. All right. Okay, moving on to some more questions here. We got one here from Kumu. This is a really nice question. Oops, did I hit it? Okay, here we go. Venerables, at what point can we use metta meditation as an insight meditation? Is there a way of doing this? Remember reading about this or hearing about it, but don't remember exactly where.
Yeah, I would hesitate to call it an insight meditation. Actually, I hesitate to call anything an insight meditation, but that's kind of how people say, the phrase they use today. What I would say is this is probably from the man from Manatan. I forgot it's a Majjhima Nikaya sutta where Ananda explains 11 ways that you can essentially become awakened. All right, and metta is one of those, right? By practicing metta, and you see the three characteristics of existence. You see the rise and fall of things, right? So what this is pointing to is whatever you're doing, if you're observing the three characteristics of existence, that's a quote unquote insight meditation, right? So if you're practicing metta Well, you can observe, right? Your metta can feel really strong, feels really good, and you get really, like it, and then it's really weak, and you rise and fall, right? You're observing that your metta is impermanent, unstable, undependable. You're observing that if you attach to your metta, especially when it's really blissful, and then it starts being blissful, you suffer because you attach to it, and you wonder, like I did for years, why is my metta not as great as it used to be? All these things, right? So you can see that when you're practicing metta, all of this stuff is wrapped up in that, right? Metta comes and metta goes. One second you're blissed out, the next second you're angry and agitated and lashing out at somebody, right? Your metta didn't last that long, and that's perfectly fine because it's anicca. Right? So that's when you see something with insight, what you're seeing is the anicca, dukkha, anatta. You're seeing impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, soullessness. You're seeing the rise and fall. You're seeing the gratification, the danger, and the escape. Whatever experience you have, if you're using those frameworks that the Buddha gives us in the suttas, that is an insight meditation, right? You're developing a mind state of vipassana. Right? The Buddha calls a swift pair of messengers. The mind state of samatha, which is a calm, tranquil mind unified on an object, and the mind state of vipassana, which is a mind of insight that pierces through, that sees deeply. Right? So whenever you see the three characteristics of existence, then you're developing a mind state of vipassana.
So if you want to develop your metta so that you start experiencing insight knowledge, the way to do it is you want to develop some samadhi around the theme of loving kindness, so that if you can keep the mind just on this theme continuously, for example, towards yourself or towards someone else or another living being, until your mindfulness on this particular theme, this wish for the welfare of yourself or someone else, is continuous. Then once you have this kind of samadhi, you can observe as it changes. If you want to start noticing the three characteristics instead of keeping the mind focused on that particular theme. This can take quite a lot of work, and it can be difficult to do, I think, in worldly life. I'm looking at, we don't have any, I don't know Kumu, unfortunately. I don't know if Kumu is a monastic or a lay person. So I think one way to sort of look at it from a different point of view, dovetailing with what Bhante Jaya is saying, is that insight meditation is about seeing the three characteristics. If you want to be able to do that to develop insight knowledge, it's helpful to be in the right kind of environment. And so perhaps going on retreats or a long stay in a monastery is a good way to do that. Some of the Western Sangha of Ajahn Chah, for example, have what they call, you can be a lay guest at a retreat that they're running for a few months during the winter, or you can actually take on the role of an anagarika and follow the precepts for a year staying at the monastery and have intensive retreat periods as well. And this is probably a very good situation for someone who wants to practice intensive meditation, but doesn't want to commit to monastic life for a very long time, such as ordaining as a monk or a bhikkhuni, for example. Of course, here at Empty Cloud, lay residency, you stay as a lay guest for a while to practice meditation also. So, we have a question from, see, that was Kumu. We got a lot of things popping up here. See, I'm going to scroll through, pardon me, my technical ineptitude.
I think.
So, Sud was the next one. Here we go. Yes. Here we go. Dear Venerables, it is enforced somewhat in my... excuse me. This is the same question we did before about lawn care and pests.
So this is where we kind of skipped.
Right. First book of Buddhism.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're too far out.
With Joseph Hammond has a wish-sharing merit for Bhante Jagaro. May any merit I've made offering virtual flowers aid Bhante Jagaro in having a successful, safe tutor.
Thank you, Joseph.
Okay, we have a question from Hasanta Gunasekara. I understand that there was an ordination recently. Is there a video available? And when will the new bhikkhu or bhikkhuni join monk chat? Oh, that's a good question, right? So when will we have Venerable Metiko on monk chat? And that's a great question. We'll have to put that to Bhante Sudaso with his assignment when he assigns people to monk chat next time. And everyone will have a chance to say hello. I have another question from, okay. So this is a clarification from Sud. This is good. Okay. But again, the question about lawn care and pests, she's saying, he or she is saying they want to clarify, I have to employ Green X Pest Services since all my neighbors are doing this. These guys spray stuff. Oh, but it says, I'm not sure if their techniques are harmful to the pests. Okay, well, I guess that's probably the key point, really. If the spraying is going to kill the pests or harm them, and if that's the intention, because that's the key point with regard to the first precept. Are you actually intending to harm or to kill someone, kill an animal or a human being or something? And so, I guess that's something to look into. What will the spray do, and then you have to make decisions from there. So, we have a question. Okay.
We did answer that question.
I think that's okay. We have a question. We have a question from Mark. Do we miss his question? We've got Mark asked the question about his client who's filled with disgust about everything in their life. So perhaps we've taken care of that. If there's another question from Mark, we'll get to it soon, hopefully. A question from TJ: is kama sawa a sensual pleasure? A sensual pleasure that flows in or out of the mind? In parentheses, drunk on beer. However, kamatana is a stronger thirst for sensual pleasure. In parentheses, drunk on tequila. Okay. Okay.
TJ, are you an alcoholic?
So who wants to take this one? Is kamasawa a sensual pleasure that flows in or out of the mind, drunk on beer? However, kamatanha is a stronger thirst for sensual pleasure, similar to drunk on tequila. Okay, let's jump in there.
I reject the concept of trying to put them together like one is stronger than the other. So I would throw out the example, the beer and tequila example. Actually, I think I answered this after my talk too, because I'm talking about this when Bhava Tanha, when we talked about that. But so the asavas are the outflows, right? These are, if you want to say, the asavas are kind of deeper, more subtle, right? Tanha can also be very deep and subtle, but it can also be very gross, right? This is the origin. So the outflows, the asavas, are a sort of, how should I put this? Because I'm leaning towards saying one is deeper than the other, but technically, I think they're kind of really coming from the same root. I really think that, yeah, it's an interesting question.
All right. Getting into the differences between these terms, these kind of technical terms, you might say asawa and tanha, and they're all about sensual pleasures, and to go beyond suffering, we have to get rid of our sensual desire to get concentration even in the first place. I think whether they come at you weak or strong, you got to overcome them anyway. So here we go. Got a question from Julie. Okay. Good evening, Venerables. Do you have a favorite sutta, a favorite verse from the Dhammapada?
So sutta for myself, I mean, I'm not sure this is my favorite, but I actually quite like the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. It's the first teaching of the Buddha, and the middle way, and the Noble Eightfold Path. And the Four Noble Truths, yeah. Actually, I actually wanted to find the Dhammapada verse. I just don't know where it is. So
Okay, Bhante Jagara's looking up a Dhammapada verse. And
there's a Dhammapada if you want to look up too.
Bhante Jaya, do you have a favorite sutta or a favorite verse?
It's always hard to pick just one. But if you've listened to Bhante Sudaso long enough, you'll hear one of his famous things is, "This is my favorite sutta," but I always say that about because I'm the same way. I love probably my favorite Dhammapada verse is in the thousands, and it's greater than conquering 1,000 times 1,000 men in battle is one who conquers themselves. Like that one, when I first read the Dhammapada, that one really connected with me. I love, hatred is not appeased by hatred. That's a great one. And I also love, happy we are, those who are friendly amidst the hostile. Among hostile people, we live free. With the line that says, "Feeders on joy we shall be, like the radiant gods." Like those are all really impactful. And so it's like most people, when you read the suttas, these things will pop up. In terms of favorite sutta, again, a tough one. I would probably have to say, the sutta, the 5 subjects of contemplation. That was probably one of my earliest suttas that I read, and I was like, "Yep. This Buddhist stuff is true." So the 5 subjects of contemplation sutta is probably my favorite of all of them.
That's so great. Yeah, sadhu. Yeah. Okay. That's just one of mine as well. The same thing crossed my mind. There's so many that I like. I gave pick just one. The 5 subjects of frequent recollection is a personal favorite. Also, I like the Kalama Sutta. Very good. The standards for how do you know which teachings to follow and which teachings not to follow. The Kalama Sutta and. Okay, so maybe we'll just mention that one. There are many others I like as well. I really enjoyed the 4 Dhamma summaries at the end of the Ratapala Sutta that was done recently by it was a monk panel, I guess, on the Ratapala Sutta just a week ago or so, I think it was. So I recommend if you look that up on the live streams or on the YouTube channel, you might find that interesting. And Bhante Jagara looks like he's Dhammapada verse. Right?
Yeah, I found the Dhammapada verse, but part of it is, like people translate different ways. So this one I like from Don Jeff. So this is the 8. I can't say it's my favorite. It's just something that's been going through my head recently. And it's so I'll read the Ajahn Jeff translation of it. It's irrigators guide the water, fletchers shape the arrow shaft, carpenters shape the wood, the wise control themselves.
Sadhu. I have one. One is it better than 1,000 meaningless words is one word that brings peace. So it's really nice. They use that in Thailand quite a bit. Just to throw in some Thai spice, perhaps. They say then they'll sometimes add on to it. They say, and what is that one word? It's Buddho. Because a common meditation style in Thailand is the repetition of this meditation word, Buddho, Buddho, Buddho. And it's quite a trick to keep the mind on it. Just always saying this one word, Buddho, Buddho, Buddho. And so if you start asking the meditation master a lot of questions, you might say, you're just supposed to be saying one word, and that is Buddho. You have I see you looking through the Dhammapada. Stop me if you've got a verse you want to throw in there also. Okay. We have a hello from Maine from Kim Gordon. Hello, Kim. And Lisa says hi. And Mark has a little bit of clarification on his question about the client who was experiencing disgust in regard to everything. He says, I do hypnotherapy. And this client came to me in a life crisis, someone experiencing disgust. And I wonder if that brings up any additional ideas for either of the Venables. Hypnotherapy, they're a client doing hypnotherapy client in a life crisis. And maybe in a life crisis, this is, it can be useful to point out to people that this is temporary. If you're in crisis, the crisis is temporary. And for all of us, if we're experiencing crisis in our lives, it can be quite useful simply to remember that fact, that that this too shall pass.
Yeah, this is this when you're in a mind state, your thoughts are clouded by your mind state. Like what I'll notice is I will, like there'll be something that's going to be happening 3 or 4 days from now, but I'm exhausted right now. My mind's like, oh, I don't want to do that thing 3 or 4 days from now. And I have to wait a second. That's how you feel now. It's not even here yet. It's a couple. So you got like when somebody is totally wrapped up in this life crisis, right? And obviously that makes sense that their mind would be. Then everything is being filtered and funneled through that mind state. And so, yes, everything is there's going to be some kind of disgust for everything, right? So this person is going to need to have a lot of help to kind of be, eventually guided and taken out of that mind state so they can see things other than disgust.
We've gotten more clarification too. These are great ideas, and we've got more clarification on many psychosomatic issues that all doctors have given up on him, the therapy client. And so it's thank you, Bhante Jaya. This is a additional little permutation that many people have run into. I think that the doctors can't help them. They're experiencing a lot of physical or mental suffering, and the doctors can't seem to help them. So what to say to that? I think many of us have had this kind of experience, and perhaps pointing out that this person is not alone, and that this is seems to be part of the human condition, that we get sick and we may not actually know what the cure would be, and it may be quite difficult to find somebody who does. It's a kind of an ironic teaching from the Thai forest masters is this is normal, quite it can be kind of shocking at first when we think of something that we really feel like it shouldn't be this way. This is abnormal. This isn't right. So on like this, but they point out actually your experience is normal, and unfortunately many of us have to experience this kind of suffering. We'll have health issues and we may not even really understand what they are, or there may not be an expert to help us. And if we use this, maybe perhaps we can use this as an opportunity to deepen our practice and come closer to our own humanity, realizing the reality of our own humanity. This is the way life is.
Add something to this?
Please.
So, Mark, as you noticed, the person's probably not too interested in Buddhism, but you are. So I would encourage you to use this patient and other patients. It sounds like maybe you're working some quite difficult people, and use this as a catalyst for motivation for practice, because the extent at which you are calm and peaceful and have a mind that's kind and compassionate, that's going to be a benefit to your patients. And it's also worth mentioning that if you are around, it can be quite difficult for you being with patients that are having a lot of dukkha, struggling a lot. It can be quite difficult for you, and always keep that in mind of looking after yourself. So.
Should we move on to the next question?
Yeah, we have quite a few questions, but it's already 8:52.
Yeah, we're not going to get through all of this. It's okay.
So Luisa writes in saying, I am practicing meditation and I'm becoming frustrated with those people who are not focused or as aware as I am. What is the best way to deal with this? So I'm going to quite make this out. To practice metta. Oh, okay. Would it be to practice metta and loving kindness? Would that be a good way to deal with it? Sure.
I mean, one option is you can try go into a locked room by yourself. Maybe somebody can put some food under, shove it under the door and then keep you locked in, and you practice that way for days and see how And I'm being a little tongue in cheek by this, but it's sometimes our minds can. How do you say, if we have a particular tendency and we actually take a step away from that stimulus, you may find that your mind may become peaceful, but Alternatively, your mind may actually have that same tendency. It will find some other outlet, and then having that contrast can help you be less less believing your mind when it starts to go out and blame other people for the various frustrations. So that's one thing.
I'd like to. So
Please.
this is not about metta and loving kindness. This is about arrogance and conceit. Yours. This is the arrogance and conceit that arises in meditators. This is very common. Think about it this way. Like the Buddha talks about being able at the top of the mountain, as an awakened being is at the top of the mountain, being able to see all the suffering of all the beings around, right? As you're practicing, guess what? You're going up the mountain. And every once in a while, you turn around and you start to see, it's like, oh God, look at all these stupid people, right? So that's when you see that, yeah, metta is fine, but that's when you counteract. It's like, oh, who are you? Are you awakened yet? It's like, that's something that I've trained in my own mind, that anytime that any kind of judgment will arise, I say, well, okay, what about you? And that's what the Buddha says, right? Do not not just what is this? Do not look upon what the omissions and commissions of others, but to what you have done and not done. So this is a trap of conceit. When you start to see that, oh, I'm a good meditator, I'm mindful. These people are so unmindful. Yeah, they are, but so are you. Are you mindful all the time? Probably not. Right. So this is probably good. This is good. Then this is when you bring in metta for yourself, because you're so ignorant and arrogant, and metta for the other people who are also ignorant. And this is a very important thing, because if you're like, oh, these people, they're so unmindful, I'm going to give metta to them. That could be very like falling into like pity, right? That's not real compassion. That's not real metta. That's kind of like, oh, they're so stupid, I'm going to give them metta. But you have to be very careful with the mind. The mind is very subtle, very devious when it comes to these kind of things. So put it back on yourself. Watch your mind.
Okay. We have Ocean Blue. Says, hello, Venerables. I've been feeling obsessed with a person for a long time. How can I practice meditation to stop these feelings and thoughts? Obsession with a person. I want to know what kind of obsession it is, what kinds of thoughts you're having about this person, but I wonder if there's a more general answer. Okay, let's see. One thing I've done in the past when I'm finding myself obsessed with a certain person and thinking about them a lot, and if it brought up unskillful mental states, then I would immediately, as soon as I started noticing myself thinking about them, I would change the subject to something that I thought was skillful. So, for example, practicing loving kindness meditation, or some other form of meditation, some kind of mental exercise that I thought would bring up skillful mental states. I even did something once. I remember I was on a meditation retreat once in my cabin, and my mind would go to a certain person, and I'd start thinking about them, and I would try to think about them in wholesome ways, but I would always get really fed up with them and get quite angry. Now, of course, you're talking about obsession with a person. It could be having any kind of thoughts we don't know, but this was in my particular circumstances. I was getting quite angry, and so I noticed this, and I made up my mind that whenever this person came into my mind, I was just going to kind of push them out. I was going to think of something else, as I said. And so, and I remember one time it happened. I was quite frustrated, and so I just started yelling out in my cabin there, looking at my altar, yelling out the 32 parts of the body chant. This thing is 32 parts of the body. It doesn't really have anything to do with. I was getting angry. It wouldn't normally be considered an antidote to anger, but I used it just because it was something else, and it blocked out the thoughts of this other person. And after a minute or two, I felt more relaxed in my mind, went on to other things, and so that was that worked for me in that circumstance. Okay, this question from Robin Ellis. Venerables, how do you decide whether to follow Tibetan or Theravada, or are they both right? Do we feel like we kind of
answered some?
perhaps we covered this earlier? Okay. Obviously, we talked a bit about how we came into Theravada Buddhism. We may have touched on that quite a bit in that section, I think. Seems like we feel like we may have covered that already. We have a question from Scott Bartel. Can Bhante J please tell us another story about how his loving kindness protected him during his challenging social work?
I don't know which ones you've heard, Scott. Maybe this we might get to I could talk, Scott, but I think we're gonna maybe see if there's any more pertinent questions for people to cover. If you want to hear more stories, you can send me an email or catch me on a Dhammapalooza or something like that, and I'll talk more. Yeah, we're already at 9 o'clock basically, so we're getting close to the end.
Question from Praveen. In our country, in some government institution, the government officials don't do public work without taking bribes. How to deal with it? If we don't give a bribe, they do not do our work. How do we deal with this?
That's every government everywhere. You think that's how it works in America? Maybe Praveen is from Sri Lanka or someplace where you think, oh, that's more corrupt, but that's how it is everywhere. It's bribery, lobbyists, money makes the world go around, as they say. And I don't know that there's a the Buddha had any fix for that.
Right, yeah. Yes. Okay. I'm sure. Right. Question from Praveen again. Joseph. Okay. We have a question from Joseph. What is pati pati? Oh, okay, the meaning of a Pali word. I believe this is pati pati, if I understand what's written here. P-A-T-I, P-A-T-T-I, which is would be referring to simply the term for practice, I think. I think we usually hear it as patipada.
There's two words that usually go together that I've seen in some places. Pati, like you said, patipada and pati. Maybe I think there's the practice and study. Maybe I don't know. Yeah,
pariyati being study, I think.
Oh, pariyati. Oh no, that's what I'm thinking of. Okay,
right.
Yeah.
So this would be practice. So actually, more like actually doing meditation practice. And pariyati being study, I think. Right? Okay. Okay. Then. Okay, I'm not sure. I think this is maybe dovetailing to something earlier. Let me read it and see if there's some understanding here. As a Theravada Buddhist, this is from Hasanta Gunasekara. As a Theravada Buddhist, the comments about not focusing on the Theravada, but focusing on the Buddhism resonates. Wasn't there earlier schools of Buddhism that are lost? Theravada wasn't the first? Question mark?
No.
Sorry, saying Bhante J says no.
18 schools.
Okay.
Theravada was one of the ones that kind of survived out of that 18 school period. If you Google Buddhism 18 schools, then you can learn all about it. Like Bhante Sujato has stuff about it and things like that. It's a bit detailed.
I think even now, even the term Theravada is kind of in question. I was reading in the introduction to a translation of a sutta that published a few years ago by a professor that actually now they really refer to it as the Sri Lankan school, and so perhaps even the old. And he was saying that actually they don't really. Perhaps the terms Theravada and Mahayana actually may be outmoded even in the present. I can't keep up with it all. Okay, we have some comments here. Happy Friday, Tanjagro, Tanwade, and Bhante Jayasara. We've got a comment from Mary as well. I used to be somebody, then luckily I retired early. So there you go. We have a question from Kobe. Korean passage. Since coming home from the monastery, I've been integrating loving kindness much more into my meditation. Without fail, after spreading this metta, I feel remarkably at peace and my heart more full. Wow. Sadhu. Excellent. Okay. Some loving kindness from binaural Dean and Kumu says, says, thank you so much for that explanation on Metta Bhavana. There's some sadhus and Putrika. Sorry? Okay. Putrika Munasinghe says, good morning, good evening. And then we get to Edward Clark saying questions about sexual orientation. Is queer and straight concepts that are dependent on time and place? My friends debate me over this. I see it all as empty. Okay.
So you want Buddhist monks to give you some answers so you can go argue with them? Not biting at that one.
Yeah, it's kind of not really.
Okay, so we have silence. Okay. Joseph Hammond is saying maybe we missed the first part of the question that he was asking. I gotta remember which question it was. Something. So sorry, Joseph. Maybe if you type in your question again, we could. We're getting ready to wrap up here, but if you do it quickly, maybe we can catch it. And then we have more sadhus and wise Anjalis and Hasanta Gunasekara saying thanks, Bantes. All and warm congratulations to Bante Metiko for embarking on the Sangha journey. Sadhu. All right. And that's the last that we have on the stream here. Keep this up for another few moments, see if Joseph's going to write in more and see if any of the yogis here have any questions before we wrap up. Okay. Yeah, so we have one. Good. All right.
What would your advice be? Or yeah, it's a quick one. So, like, I was born into a different culture and a different religion, but I was not raised religious. So, like, my parents allowed, I guess, us and my siblings to wander around and learn about, they actually even required us to learn about like different religions and then whatever we make our choices. I guess, well, to me, Buddhism is the only one that actually makes sense in my head. So my question is, do you recommend raising children Buddhist, like from the time that they're born, or would you rather, or yeah, I guess, or do you think it's better to just kind of like raise them without any religion and then give them a choice when they're like,
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, I've wondered about that myself a little bit. Thought of it. I wonder if is that an answer?
I would just practice and be compassionate and wise. Let they'll pick up on if there's something useful, and they'll feel your goodness. If that makes any sense, and they'll be attracted to it in the long run. I'm pretty confident about that.
Mm-hmm. I would say if both parents are Buddhist, then yeah, raise them Buddhist. Meditate with them, take them to I have zero regrets that I was raised Catholic at all, because all the good things and all the good qualities and everything that I learned growing up from that religion still are of use to me today. This is I'm of a different religion, but there's the morality, the ethics, all the good teachings, it's still very useful, even if they go away from that religion. It's okay, but at least they kind of had a basis that I think even Ayasoma has answered this. She says, you should make them Buddhist from the time they come out of the womb, she said. And I kind of agree with her on that too. It's like, if the family's Buddhist, and it's good to raise them in a good, ethical, and good way.
yeah.
Maybe another. I think that's wonderful. I'm actually of the same mind. I raised Buddhist from the first moment. But I think for people who are kind of reticent to feel like they're inculcating a certain dogma into their children, they want to raise their children to be kind of inquiring or questioning. Maybe what you could do is focus on kind of cause and effect relationships, and highlighting cause and effect relationships that the children can see. Like, for example, how does it feel to give? How does it feel to be selfish? For example, go through cause and effect relationships with them over time. So
Joseph, this is the question.
This one here.
Yeah. Maybe this will be the last one.
I think I may want to take a stab at that queer and straight question also.
Okay.
Okay, so Joseph Hammond asked, why is practice offering supreme? This is making an offering of your own practice, like a meditation practice, I think. Does that sound right? Why is, I don't know, practice offering supreme?
Maybe this is one more.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
It gets tricky reading these because we get the questions sometimes are scattered down they're being entered in bits and pieces and
Okay,
so on.
I get it.
Okay, I read Petit. Okay, the best way of honoring the Buddha. Why is it the supreme offering?
Where the Buddha says the one who is honors me the most is the one who is practicing in line with the Dhamma, etc.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So this is well, yeah, so it comes in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, as I recall, right? So he's their heavenly flowers are falling as the Buddha is preparing to pass into parinibbana. He's going to die. He's going to pass into nibbana, and the Devas are aware of this, and they're dropping heavenly flowers as an offering to him. And as I recall, there's strains of heavenly music playing as well. And Venerable Ananda notices this and mentions it. And the Buddha says this is the greatest kind of the terminology I can't remember exactly, but it's something like it's a very high form of puja, a very high form of worship that they're doing this for the Buddha before he passes into parinibbana. But then he makes the point that that actually the highest form of honor towards one's teacher is actually to practice their teachings. And this is what I think this is what the pati means in the broadest sense is actually practicing the teachings, although oftentimes it can be cast in terms of meditation practice. If we really respect our teacher, if we really respect their teachings, and we try to use them in our lives, and this is in English we'd say the sincerest form of flattery is imitation. So this is not actually flattery, but a form of worship or respect that we respect the teaching so much that we actually utilize them. I wanted to take a stab at the question about queer and straight, or the concepts of queer and straight conditioned. Are they concepts that are dependent on time and place? And I think that personally, I'd say yes. How we think about queerness and being straight and all these different kinds of things, to each person it's somewhat unique, and to each culture it's unique, to each country it's unique, and in time it's going to change over time. All these are concepts, and so I think that this we compare this to the timeless teachings of the Buddha, and try to get down to those, as queerness and straight are constantly going to be changing and so on. We want to keep our compass as the Dhamma, and keep grounding in skillful thought and skillful speech and skillful action, and not be swept up in changing phenomena. So whenever we think about or we're involved in debate, for example, or involved in interactions with people, we want to keep those as our compass in life, the timeless teachings of the Buddha. Okay. Can we close on that note? Okay. So I guess we'll do 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Now, I guess we'll sign off for those who are joined with us remotely. And if any of you are in this area, tomorrow we've got a public Dhamma talk and meditation session in the evening starting at 6 o'clock. On Sunday from 1 to 4, we have a practice in Dhamma afternoon with more Dhamma teachings. And then next Wednesday morning is probably the next live stream, I should say. Until then, I hope you're able to keep prospering in the Dhamma, and may you be well.
Stay on page.